When the verdict came in on June 6, 2025, guilty on all 4 counts, Shade Robinson's mother, Sheena Scarborough, was standing in that courthouse hallway. She had been fighting for over a year, searching, grieving, demanding answers. And when that moment finally came, when the word guilty landed in that courtroom, someone asked her how she felt. And she said this.
It's such a heavy weight. It's never going to be the same. Even for Adriana, like my mom, that's our best friend. That's my baby. That's my angel. And there's no such thing as justice. Like, we don't have her, but we all, please understand how you treat people and how you put out energy and how you recycle it into the community, because I guess that's what keeps me knowing that it was the relationship that I had with my daughter, and it's nothing but positive energy, and the goals and the things that she was able to accomplish in her 19 years is just so phenomenal. And I have that peace in my heart knowing that I did the best possible job as a mother, and I will forever have her close in my heart and spirit.
That right there is the truth about what happens when a life is taken. The gavel comes down, the cameras leave, but the grief does not go anywhere. Welcome to Unseen Stories. Today we are talking about Shade Carina Robinson, 19 years old, criminal justice student, daughter, sister, friend. A young woman who had every single reason to believe that April 1st, 2024 was going to be a good night. She never made it home. Now, before we get into what happened that night, and we are going to get into all of it, I need you to know who Shade was first, because this story gets heavy. And the only way to carry that weight the right way is to understand exactly who we lost before we talk about how she was taken. So stay with me. This one matters. Shade Carina Robinson was born on May 10, 2004, in Vicksburg, Mississippi, the first child of Sheena Scarborough and Carlos Robinson. Before she was even 2 years old, her mother packed up and moved with her to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And that city, right there on the western shore of Lake Michigan, became home. Her mom described her from early on as an inquisitive child, always curious, always wanting to understand the world around her. As a little girl, she played soccer, joined the Girl Scouts, tried ballroom dancing at one point, got into rapping, got into dancing. Whatever was in front of her, Shade was willing to try it. That energy, that openness, it stayed with her whole life. Her father Carlos lived in Florida, so growing up, Shade moved between 2 households, 2 cities. One young woman learning how to hold herself together across both. And she did. In middle school, she joined the junior ROTC. And it was around that time she started talking seriously about joining the United States Air Force one day. Her grandfather was a retired Navy veteran. Her uncle served in the Army. Service ran in her blood. She wanted to be part of that legacy. In 7th grade, she moved to Florida to live with her dad full-time. She attended Ida S. Baker High School down there. But after a few years, things were not working the way they needed to. Her mother noticed the environment was becoming harmful to her, and in 2019, when Shade was around 15 years old, she made the decision to come back to Milwaukee for good. Let that settle for a second. 15 years old. Making a clear-eyed decision about what she needed to protect herself. That was not a child acting impulsively. That was someone who already understood that your environment shapes you, and who was willing to choose differently. She came back to Milwaukee, enrolled at Riverside University High School, worked hard, and graduated a full semester early. December 2021. Done. Ahead of schedule. After graduation, she enrolled at Milwaukee Area Technical College, majoring in criminal justice. She got her own apartment. She bought her own car. She kept her job at Pizza Shuttle on the East Side, a job she had held since she was 15, and took on a second job at the Wisconsin Country Club on the city's north side. She even helped her little sister Adriana get a position there alongside her. 2 jobs. Her own place. A full course load. And she was doing it. Her manager at Pizza Shuttle, Justin Romano, said this about her. She was a vibrant, extroverted presence at Pizza Shuttle. Very outgoing, talked to everyone, and was always there to lighten the mood. Her coworker Erica wrote this: "We miss you, Shade. We were family and friends. You made our day at Pizza Shuttle. It was never a dull moment when you were around. If somebody was having a bad day, you're most definitely the person to go to with your positivity. You bring so much positive energy with every word that you speak, and not to mention the hugs you offered everyone. Every day before you left, you made sure you told everyone that you loved them and to be careful going home. And a close friend told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Her laugh was contagious. She was confident in the best possible way. She was unstoppable and not in an arrogant way. That word kept coming up from every single person who knew her. Unstoppable. In January of 2024, Shade took a solo trip to Jamaica. Her first time leaving the country. 19 years old. Alone. And when she came back, she wrote about it. And I want to read this directly because this was Shade in her own words. Jamaica was the best vacation I can ever go on. My first out-of-the-country trip, and I had a blast. At only 19, although I was quite nervous going out the country alone, it was all worth it and a great way to start the new year. Cheers to new beginnings. Because this is what I worked hard for. Last semester was so stressful for me because I was taking 5 classes while working 60 to 80 hours a week and still managed to end the semester with a 3.5 GPA. I am beyond proud of myself and I will do it all again. Hard work pays off even when you feel unmotivated. Always keep that motivation going. So go on those trips you always wanted to go on, or do something you always wanted to do because life is too short. I'm only 19 and even though I travel, I still have my own responsibilities. I have my own car, my own apartment, my own bills, and still have to support me. Before traveling, some advice I will give: always take care of your priorities first, then travel second. I hope this can motivate someone. 19 years old. Writing like that. Thinking like that. Living like that. By spring of 2024, she was just weeks away from earning her Associate of Arts degree. She had plans to enlist in the Air Force after that. She had a future that was already taking shape. And the people around her felt every bit of that energy. Easter Sunday, March 31st, 2024. The day before everything changed. Shade spent that afternoon with her family at her grandmother Linda Scarborough's house. Her mother Sheena cooked. They ate, they laughed, they talked the way families do on a holiday afternoon. The kind of day that feels ordinary when you are living it. That memory of hugging Shade as she left with her sister Adriana was the last time Sheena saw her daughter. Nobody knew that when they said goodbye that evening. Monday, April 1st, 2024. Shade got up that morning, got ready for work, and video chatted with her mother the way they always did, just checking in, talking through the day. She put on ripped blue jeans, a white shirt, white shoes, and a black puffy coat. She had something to look forward to that evening. A first date. The man she was meeting was named Maxwell Anderson, 33 years old. A Milwaukee bartender who had worked at several establishments around the city. Shade and Maxwell had reportedly been communicating for a period of time before this. Some reports indicate they may have connected through a dating app. Others suggest they may have met at one of the bars where he worked. What is confirmed is that by April 1st, they had exchanged enough messages to make a plan, and Shade was looking forward to it. On her way out that morning, she stopped in the lobby of her apartment building and spoke to the building secretary. She told her about the date, told her how excited she was. Now here is something worth holding on to. Not because it changes anything about what happened, but because it matters to everything that came after. Shade used the Life 360 app, a location-sharing app she had set up with her mother and close friends so they could always see where each other were. She was the kind of person who checked in, who kept people informed, who made sure someone always knew where she was. That habit, that instinct to stay connected, would later become one of the most important tools investigators had in this entire case. That afternoon at around 4:15 in the evening, Shade texted Maxwell to confirm their plans. According to court documents, Maxwell first suggested a spot called Brat House on 3rd. Then he changed it. He told her he needed to stop by the Twisted Fisherman restaurant to pick up his W-2 form from when he worked there the previous year, and asked if they could just eat there instead. Shade agreed. She told him she loved seafood. The Twisted Fisherman is a well-known restaurant in Milwaukee's Menominee Valley. Maxwell knew the place well because he had previously worked there. Shade drove herself there in her 2020 Honda Civic. Maxwell arrived at the restaurant a little after 5 in the evening and was already sitting at the bar when Shade walked in at around 5:20. She spotted him, walked over, sat beside him. They ordered food and drinks. Witnesses described them as relaxed and conversational. No tension. No visible discomfort. Just two people having what looked like a normal first date. About an hour later they paid their bill and left. Both got into Shade's car and drove downtown to their next stop, Duke's on Water, a bar at 158 East Juneau Avenue. Surveillance footage captured them pulling into the parking lot at around 6:30 in the evening and walking in together. Inside they drank, talked, played beer pong. Anderson reportedly took extra shots throughout the evening. He stepped outside briefly at around 8:30. And then at 9:03 that night, cameras at Duke's captured them both walking out of the bar and heading toward Shade's car. At 9:24 that night, Shade's phone, tracked through the Life 360 app, pinged at Maxwell Anderson's home, the 3100 block of South 39th Street on Milwaukee's south side. A neighbor's surveillance camera captured two figures entering the property through the side gate. Shade Robinson went in, and she never came back out. Now this is where the story shifts, and I need you to stay with me because what the evidence showed over the next several hours is something that took investigators, prosecutors, and an entire community a long time to fully process. After Shade's phone pinged at Anderson's home at 9:24 that night, a neighbor's surveillance camera continued to record activity at the property. A light came on inside the house. At 11:25, someone was seen leaving through the side yard. That same person returned at 11:47. More movement was captured until approximately 12:47 in the morning, when Shade's Honda Civic pulled away from the house. Based on all the evidence investigators later assembled, they concluded that Shade was gone within approximately 2 hours of arriving at that house. From 12:47 in the morning onward, her car moved through Milwaukee with Maxwell Anderson allegedly at the wheel. The Life 360 app continued tracking her phone. The car traveled through downtown, drove past Shade's own apartment building without stopping, and continued north to Pleasant Valley Park near the Milwaukee River. The phone pinged there at around 1:33 in the morning and the car stayed approximately 23 minutes. Then it moved again, south this time, down to Warnemont Park in the city of Cudahy, about 11 miles from where Shade's car would later be found. The phone pinged at Warnemont at around 2:45 in the morning. Surveillance footage from Cudahy High School, which sits near that park, captured a vehicle heading toward the pump house area close to Lake Michigan at around 2:53 in the morning. The vehicle had reportedly forced its way through a gate to get closer to the shoreline. Investigators later recovered broken pieces from a Honda Civic at that gate. Footage from the pump house area then showed a figure descending the steep 100-foot bluff toward the Lake Michigan shoreline, making multiple trips, up and down, for close to an hour and a half. At 4:31 in the morning, the vehicle left the park. At 4:35 in the morning, Shade Robinson's phone battery died. Its final known location, Warnemont Park. Let me ask you something. Who drives someone else's car to a lakefront park at 3 in the morning, forces a gate open to get closer to a shoreline, and makes repeated trips down a bluff in the dark? That question is exactly what investigators began building their case around. Dawn on April 2, 2024. At 7:32 in the morning, the Milwaukee Fire Department responded to a vehicle fire in an alleyway near 30th and Lisbon on the city's north side. When they arrived, they found a 2020 Honda Civic fully engulfed in flames. A resident named Patricia Newton Powell described what she saw. A car caught fire in the alley behind her house at 30th and Lisbon around 7:30 Tuesday morning. It was catching on fire and all of a sudden it's getting bigger, so I called the fire department. It looks like somebody had started it. Nothing else was smoking outside the car, so it started on the inside. Another witness told investigators they saw a white male in a gray hoodie and a tan backpack exit the vehicle, toss a lighter into it, and walk away heading west. Despite the fire damage that destroyed the interior, investigators were able to read the vehicle's registration sticker on the exterior. That car belonged to Shade Robinson. Inside the trunk, which survived the fire, they found Shade's clothes. The same ripped blue jeans and white shirt she had been wearing the night before, and remnants of an iPhone consistent with hers. At this point, 7:32 in the morning, Shade had not yet been reported missing. Her co-workers at Pizza Shuttle were just beginning to notice she had not shown up for her shift. Calls were going unanswered, and the people closest to her were growing worried in a way that told them something was deeply wrong. Then at around 5:29 that afternoon, a man at Warnemont Park in Cudahy called police. He had been walking along the Lake Michigan shoreline and found something on the beach, 2/3 of the way down a 100-foot bluff. A severed human leg, with pink toenails. The Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office responded immediately. The remains were taken to the medical examiner's office. It was determined they belonged to a black female approximately 5 feet tall. The leg had been deliberately separated from the body using a sharp instrument. The medical examiner noted multiple cutting marks and sharp force trauma to the bone. That same evening at around 9 at night, a friend of Shade's walked into a Milwaukee police station and filed a missing person report. She told officers Shade had not shown up for work, was not responding to anyone, and that the last known contact from her was a Snapchat post from Dukes on Water the night before. A burned car registered to a missing woman. Human remains found at the same park where her phone had last pinged. 2 discoveries in one day. And investigators were about to connect them. April 3, 2024. Investigators requested Shade Robinson's phone records from Verizon Wireless. What they received changed the trajectory of the entire case. Her call logs, messages, and location data showed that the last text from her phone had gone to a number with a 262 area code. Detectives ran that number through their database. Came back to one name: Maxwell Anderson. Investigators went to the Twisted Fisherman and reviewed the surveillance footage. There were Shade and Anderson together at the bar on the evening of April 1st. The restaurant's owner and manager confirmed that Anderson had previously worked there and told them he came to pick up his W-2. The bartender on duty that night added something else. He told investigators that Anderson mentioned he was staying because he had a first date with a girl he was meeting there. Anderson himself told people at that restaurant that he was on a first date with Shade Robinson. That same evening, also on April 3rd, a friend of Shade's came forward and told detectives she had access to the Life 360 app that Shade shared with family and close friends. According to that app, Shade's phone had last pinged at Warnemont Park, the same location where the leg had been found, at approximately 4:33 in the morning on April 2nd. Same park, same time frame, same location where that figure had been captured on camera making repeated trips down to the Lake Michigan shoreline. On April 4th at 1:16 in the afternoon, sheriff's deputies pulled over Maxwell Anderson during a traffic stop a few blocks from his home. He was taken into custody. A search of his vehicle produced a dark gray zip-up hooded coat, matching the one worn by the man seen near Shade's burning car on surveillance footage. A search warrant was then executed at Anderson's home on the 3100 block of South 39th Street. What investigators found inside that home: blood on bedding in one of the bedrooms, blood on the walls leading down to the basement, several gasoline containers in the garage, a knife in the kitchen sink, a large black axe on the living room wall, women's clothing hidden between a basement support beam and the foundation, a woman's identification card that did not belong to Shade Robinson, and more than 50 knives found throughout the home. 50 knives. Initial forensic testing showed that the blood found in the home did not match Shade Robinson's DNA. That detail became a central argument for the defense during trial. But investigators pressed forward with what they had. Among the evidence recovered from Anderson's phone was a photograph. Prosecutors later described it in court as showing Shade face down on a couch with Anderson's hand on her. The defense disputed what the image showed, but it was submitted into evidence and presented to the jury. And then there was the text. On the morning of April 2nd, after Shade's car had already been found burning and after remains had been discovered at Warnemont Park, Maxwell Anderson sent a message to Shade Robinson's phone. He wrote, "How's your day going?" Prosecutors argued that message was a deliberate attempt to create the appearance that he believed she was still alive, that their night had ended normally, that he had no knowledge of where she was or what had happened. Anderson said nothing to investigators. He exercised his right to remain silent throughout the entire process. No explanation for the blood in the house. No explanation for the surveillance footage. No explanation for anything. His silence meant that every answer this case needed had to come from cameras, from phone data, from DNA, and from evidence gathered in the field. While Anderson sat in custody on a $5 million cash bond, searches across Milwaukee County continued. And they kept finding things. April 5th. Near 31st and Galena, close to where Shade's car had been found burning, searchers discovered a human foot in a wooded area near train tracks by a playground. The nail polish matched the leg found at Warnemont Park. April 6th. More human remains were found in the same vicinity. April 7th. Shade's own family, conducting their own search, found her memorial blanket on the ground in a wooded area. It had a photo of her on it alongside an image of her late dog, Coco Chanel. It was found in an area that police had reportedly already searched. Shade's mother responded. She said, "This sick son of a hurt my baby. She hurt nobody. She harmed nobody." And then she said something that went far beyond her own daughter. She said, "This is a 2024 Jeffrey Dahmer. I need him held accountable. I need justice for Shade." There has been a lot of black and brown girls that have been called missing in Milwaukee for a moment, and all of them are going to be held accountable now because they messed with the wrong family. We're not going to sit quiet and we're not going to sit still. We're going to call all of them out. We're going to speak for the whole community. We are going to come back to those words, because they matter far beyond this one case. April 18th. A man walking along the Lake Michigan beach at Marina Road discovered a human torso and arm that had washed ashore. Authorities responded and transported the remains for DNA identification. May 11th. A right arm was found in Waukegan, Illinois, also believed to belong to Shade. The Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office coordinated with 13 other agencies and a nonprofit called Bruce's Legacy to conduct maritime searches of Lake Michigan. The searches were extensive, but some of Shade's remains were never recovered. Her father Carlos broke down when he spoke about receiving the DNA confirmation. He said, "She was a good soul, good spirit. She did not deserve this. I was still hoping that my little girl was still here. That's all I had to hope for. And when they called me and told me my DNA was a match, my world crashed down. She just like me." The laugh put smiles on people's faces. She was my oldest. She was my first child. That little girl changed my life. She was my everything. I got a pain in my heart. Physical pain. A parent not supposed to have to deal with this type of trauma. Inconceivable that a father describing the moment he found out his daughter was gone. Across Milwaukee, the community mobilized. Search parties organized. Pink balloons and pink ribbons, Shade's favorite color, appeared at vigils and memorials across the city. Strangers showed up to search alongside her family. People who had never met Shade Robinson came out because they understood that this could have been someone they loved. One of Shade's cousins, after spending an exhausting day searching, sat down at Warnemont Park and said, "It's just tiring because we're not getting anywhere. But our family needs peace and we need closure. So I don't want to stop." Another community member who joined the search said, "She looked out for my baby. The least I could do is look out for her." That is a community holding its own. That is what it looks like when people refuse to let someone become just a headline. Now let's talk about Maxwell Anderson. Because understanding who he was matters to understanding how we got here. Anderson was born November 1, 1990, making him 33 years old at the time of his arrest. He was a Milwaukee native who lived in a house on the city's south side and worked as a bartender at multiple bars around the city, including Victor's nightclub on the east side and the Twisted Fisherman, among others. By some accounts, he was charismatic in social settings, a familiar face in Milwaukee's nightlife. But his record told a different story. In 2014, he was convicted of disorderly conduct after a physical altercation involving a family member. In 2015, following an incident where he reportedly smashed a glass, punched a hole in a wall, and grabbed a phone out of a relative's hand as that person tried to call the police, he was convicted of disorderly conduct, intimidating a witness, domestic abuse, and criminal damage to property. A family member suggested he seek mental health treatment around that time. In 2019, charges of battery, disorderly conduct, and second-degree reckless endangerment stemming from an attack on his sister's boyfriend with a baseball bat. He pleaded to lesser charges. And in 2021, another disorderly conduct conviction after he broke a man's nose outside a bar. That is a pattern stretching across nearly a decade. And it consistently appeared in spaces involving alcohol and situations where he believed he had the upper hand. A woman who reportedly went on a date with Anderson sometime before April 2024 spoke to Milwaukee's 12 News by phone, asking not to be identified. She described visiting his home and noticing a large hole in the backyard. When she asked about it, he told her he was building a garden. She described the inside of the house as looking like ongoing renovations that never seemed to get finished. Then he offered to show her the basement. She said, "I got a little bit of a tour," and he was like, "Do you want to see the basement?" And I was like, "No, I'm okay." He's like, "It's creepy down there." And I was like, "No, that's okay." She declined. And she left. Now here is the detail that stopped investigators. According to court documents, a confidential informant told investigators that on March 5, 2024, nearly a full month before Shade Robinson's first date with Anderson, they had been at his home. Anderson allegedly showed the informant his basement, including a plastic tarp covering the sanitation sink, the ceiling, the floor, and the walls. And then, according to that informant's statement, Anderson told them he intended to bring Shade down into that basement, using a firearm to get her there. March 5th. Shade's date was April 1st. If that account is accurate, Anderson had allegedly been planning this for weeks before that dinner at the Twisted Fisherman ever happened. Prosecutors acknowledged this account required corroboration and that the level of alleged premeditation was unusually specific. The defense argued it should be viewed with skepticism. But combined with everything else the investigation uncovered, it became part of the foundation for the most serious charge Anderson would face. And I want to ask this community something directly. How does someone sit across from another human being, order food, share drinks, watch her laugh, listen to her talk, and allegedly be planning what came next? That question does not have an easy answer, but it is one worth carrying with you. On April 12, 2024, the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office formally charged Maxwell Anderson, first-degree intentional homicide, Wisconsin's most serious criminal charge, carrying a mandatory life sentence without any possibility of parole, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, and arson of property other than a building, a misdemeanor charge related to the burning of Shade Robinson's vehicle. His bail was set at $5 million cash. Anderson pleaded not guilty. He made no public statements. He offered no explanation to investigators, to the court, or to anyone. His silence was total, and it remained total throughout everything that followed. In the months after his arrest, Shade's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Anderson. They also filed a civil lawsuit against the bars where Shade and Anderson had been on the evening of April 1st, citing that alcohol had been served to Shade, who was 19 years old at the time, without anyone verifying her age. That civil action points to something worth paying attention to. When something this catastrophic happens, accountability does not always begin and end with the individual who committed the act. It extends to every point in a chain where something could have been different. A 19-year-old was served alcohol without anyone checking her age. That is not a footnote. That is part of the story. The trial, State of Wisconsin versus Maxwell Anderson, began on May 27, 2025, in Milwaukee County Circuit Court before Judge Laura Crivello. 73 potential jurors went through the selection process. 12 were seated, 9 women and 3 men, including 2 black jurors, along with 3 alternates. Given how widely the case had been covered, finding jurors with zero prior knowledge was acknowledged by both sides to be nearly impossible. Defense attorney Jonathan Lavoie noted during that process, "It's all but certain some jurors will have at least some knowledge of the case." Opening statements began May 28. Milwaukee County Assistant District Attorney Ian Vance Karen addressed the jury. He said, "Maxwell Anderson intentionally killed Shade and attempted to make her disappear from this world. What Maxwell Anderson did to Shade Robinson was an intentional homicide. There is no question behind the intent. And there's no question about the person responsible for doing it. The killer is him. He's the last person to be with her, the last one texting her, the last one whose residence she was at, the last one who had her car, the last one who had her phone, the last one who was with her." The defense, led by attorney Anthony Cotton, pushed back on the state's case. Cotton pointed directly at the gaps. No blood from Shade Robinson found in Anderson's home. No murder weapon ever identified. No confirmed cause of death because of the condition in which the remains were recovered. He urged jurors to look at those gaps and apply reasonable doubt. Over 7 days the prosecution built its case through dozens of witnesses, law enforcement, forensic specialists, Shade's co-workers, and investigators who had worked every angle of this case from the beginning. They walked the jury through the complete surveillance record. Twisted Fisherman, Dukes on Water, the neighbor's camera at Anderson's home, the Cudahy High School footage, the Milwaukee County Transit System bus footage placing Anderson near the location of Shade's burning car on the morning of April 2nd. Every camera, every ping, every frame. They presented the photograph from Anderson's phone showing Shade face down on his couch. They presented the text he sent to her phone the morning after. "How's your day going?" Assistant Medical Examiner Dr. Lauren Decker testified about the autopsy, calling it very unusual, noting it had spanned months because of the timeline of the remains recovery. The official cause of death was listed as homicide by unspecified means. The defense called no witnesses. Maxwell Anderson did not testify. His attorney explained this as a strategic decision to protect him from cross-examination. On June 5, 2025, closing arguments were made. Prosecutor Vance Caron told the jury one final time, "There is no question about the person responsible for doing it." The defense reiterated that the state had not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury began deliberating. 45 minutes. Spread across 2 days. On June 6, 2025, they came back. Guilty. On all 4 counts. First-degree intentional homicide. Mutilating a corpse. Hiding a corpse. Arson. Maxwell Anderson stood without expression as Judge Crivello read each count. In the hallway, Shade Robinson's family held each other. Sentencing was scheduled for August 15, 2025. In Wisconsin, a first-degree intentional homicide conviction carries 1 sentence and 1 sentence only. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Maxwell Anderson will spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. A conviction. The highest charge possible. A man going away forever. And Shade's mother said, "There's no such thing as justice. We don't have her." Her father Carlos spoke to Fox 6 News after the verdict. He said, "It's the most agonizing, painful thing." He vowed to keep fighting for her legacy. Her uncle said, "My sister and parents won't stop shaking. And it ain't because they're nervous. Imagine trying to bury your niece with nobody for the service. Nobody for the service. Because not all of Shade's remains were ever found. Her family is still carrying that. A verdict on paper while their daughter, their sister, their niece, is still not fully home. Cannot be fully laid to rest. That is the reality of a case like this that the headlines, when they come and when they go, do not and cannot fully capture. There is no version of this story where Shade Robinson's family is made whole. That is the truth, and it deserves to be said plainly. Sheena Scarborough said something at the height of her grief that deserves to be brought back into this conversation. She said there have been a lot of black and brown girls called missing in Milwaukee, and she was not going to be quiet. She said they messed with the wrong family. That is not just a grieving mother speaking in the moment. That is a woman who understands that her daughter's case received attention, national attention, and that other families have not had the same. Other searches do not trend. Other cases do not get 13 coordinating agencies. Other mothers are still waiting right now. Today. The question of why certain missing persons cases generate immediate and sustained public response while others go quiet is one that communities across this country have been wrestling with for years. It does not have one simple answer. But it is a question that deserves honest engagement, not deflection. Shade Robinson's case moved in part because of her family's relentless refusal to be silent. Because her community showed up. Because people who had never met her decided her name was worth fighting for. Not every family has that network. Not every community has those resources. And that gap between the cases that get seen and the ones that do not, is something each one of us has a role in closing. Even if that role is simply refusing to scroll past. Before we close, there are 2 things I want to say directly to this community. Not to diminish Shade in any way. Not to suggest she did anything wrong because she did not. The responsibility for what happened to her belongs entirely to Maxwell Anderson. That is not up for debate. But this community deserves honesty. And these 2 things need to be said. The first is about staying connected. Shade used Life 360. She had people who could track her location in real time. She told the building secretary about her date. She checked in with her mother regularly. Those habits, those instincts became critical to the entire investigation. They are also the kinds of habits that give the people who love you a fighting chance if something ever goes wrong. When you go somewhere new, tell someone where you are going. Share your location with someone you trust. Check in when you get there and when you leave. That is not about living in fear. That is about being as protected as you can be in a world that is not always what it presents itself to be. The second is about patterns. Maxwell Anderson had a documented history of violent behavior going back to 2014. Those records existed in public court files. And yet he continued to move through Milwaukee's social spaces for another decade. As a community, we have to ask what structures we have in place to address repeated violent behavior before it reaches a point of no return. That is a systemic question. No single person can answer it alone. But it starts with acknowledging that patterns matter, that history is information, and that the gaps in how systems respond to repeated violent conduct have real and devastating consequences for real people. Shade Robinson's life is the evidence of that consequence. And she deserved better from every system that allowed Maxwell Anderson to keep going. Shade Carina Robinson was born May 10, 2004. She graduated high school early. She moved into her own apartment. She bought her own car. She worked 2 jobs while carrying a full course load. She traveled to Jamaica alone at 19 and came home inspired enough to write about it and encourage other people to go live their lives. She gave leftover pizza to unhoused people outside the restaurant where she worked, just because that was who she was. She made sure to tell every coworker she loved them before she left for the day. She was weeks away from her associate's degree. She was planning to enlist in the Air Force. She had a future already taking shape. She was, in every measurable sense, exactly who every family hopes their child becomes. And on the evening of April 1, 2024, she went on a first date. And she never made it home. Maxwell Anderson was convicted of her murder on June 6, 2025. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. And Shade Robinson's family will spend the rest of their lives without her. Her father said she was his everything. Her coworker said she told everyone she loved them before she left every single day. Her friend said she was unstoppable. Let that be what stays with you. Not the way she was taken, but who she was before anyone ever had the chance to try. Shade Robinson. May 10, 2004. Gone too soon. Never forgotten. This has been Unseen Stories. This story moved you, share it. Talk about it. Say her name. And if you know of a family still searching for answers about someone they love, say their name too. Because every single one of them deserves the same fight. Drop a comment below. Tell us whose story you want us to cover next. And if you are new here, subscribe. Because every week we bring you the stories that do not always get told the way they deserve to be told. Rest well, Shade. We see you.